what's happening, fellow travelers? Welcome back to another episode of The Strange Road. I'm Mikey. We got Bub riding shotgun tonight. Bub, what's happening?
Not much.
How you doing?
Excited.
Had a good weekend?
Oh, yeah.
Had a good time?
Great weekend. Had a great
lot of
weekend.
laughs?
Yeah.
A lot of laughs.
My legs are still sore.
Face
My feet
hurt, legs hurt, and all of it. Guys, thank you so much for sharing, liking, subscribing, hitting that notification bell. All you guys following The Strange Road, keep it up. We love what you guys are doing. We appreciate you. We're feeding you the TikToks, the Reels, the clips, all over. Shout out to Little Comb for heading that operation up for us. Shout out to Stoner and Master Control. We're not going to waste any time tonight, guys. Our guest is an investigator of physics, engineering, zero-point energy, free energy, and I think is the top researcher in the Malaysia Airlines Flight 370 mystery.
Sure.
A lot of you guys might remember this happening. It was all over the news. And you can find his work on X and YouTube, where he's streaming and uploading videos constantly. So I want to welcome Ashton Forbes, everybody. Excellent. Ashton, what's happening? Thank you so much for being here, brother.
Hey, Mikey and Bub. How's it going, guys? Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it, man. And thank you for that really amazing introduction. That's probably the best introduction that I've ever had. And I've gone on a lot of podcasts, so that means something.
That's awesome.
Well,
that's awesome.
Appreciate it. I try my best to try to give you guys your props. You've been busy. I mean, I don't know if there's anybody that I follow that posts more than you on X, other than maybe Elon or
Elon's on there a lot.
Yeah, but you've always got something cooking, and you're tying in the research of the Malaysia Airlines Flight 370 with a lot of the stuff that's currently happening right now, with whether it's drones, UAPs, these plasmas, these
direct
orbs, direct energy weapons. So
all kinds of
we would love to hear how you got into all this. I know you made your rounds about a year ago, and a lot of this stuff really started hitting, a year to 9 months ago, but it's still so relevant. So take it away, man.
Well, I think your introduction does the best explanation of who I am. I'm somebody who just researches, investigates, why I call myself an investigator, physics, zero-point energy, electrical engineering, plasma. But this all started because I was investigating Malaysian Airlines Flight 370. And so that's where I would say if I am an expert in anything, because there's no credentials to be an expert at a missing airplane.
Right. And
I'm the originator, organizer of this group, MH370X, that kind of blends both the research in MH370 plus the physics that the MH370 videos show and where that path leads. So to your point about like, how do you get involved in all these different topics, fusion, or cold fusion specifically, free energy, plasma, all this stuff, is that it wasn't by design. It's just a matter of following the thread to its logical conclusion once you start to research some of these like UFO related science topics, like anti-gravity or gravity manipulation, as I would call it. Like, how is that type of stuff possible? Or we know that a wormhole is theoretically possible by Einstein's general relativity, but how could it be actually possible? And then to try to dig into those types of questions. So that's how I've gotten to the point where I am right now. And it all began in August of 2023, right after I had actually moved back home to Minnesota. And these videos had reemerged on Reddit. And I saw them, and I remember thinking, first seeing one of the videos, and we can pull them up if you want to pull them up right now. The thermal video, the color video, I remember seeing that video and going, wow, it seemed really familiar. And I remember seeing this like back in 2014, probably that summer, and just thinking like, I had no idea. Saw it somewhere on the internet, and just ignored it. No idea what I was even looking at. No context what I was looking at. And so I saw this video out there, saw people looking at it saying, oh, this crazy video of UFOs or something, right? It's been out there since 2014. Okay, that's weird. And you can see in this video quite anomalous. Some anomalous stuff going on here. We see like smoke coming out of the back of this plane. We can see these orbs spinning around the plane. And little did I know back then what I would know now, which is this video particularly is just, this has got to be like the Rosetta Stone and like the government UFO videos, because it shows in these orbs the distinct heat signature of fusion, but it's showing it at really low temperatures, showing it at not high temperatures. And that zap we just saw there,
Wow.
it was black. It was black. It only is 3 or 4 frames and the plane is gone. From there to gone.
Crazy.
So if you just think of it in pure time, like that was there and then not there in less than 0.2 seconds. And the crazy part about the zap is it's black. It's cold. Like that's not white hot. First of all, anybody's going to fake it, they're going to make it a white hot explosion. Second of all, it's crazy that black zap that you see there can be interpreted as negative energy. It can be interpreted as, why is it cold instead of hot? Well, it's an opposite of a hot event. It's a cold explosion. And if you look up like a endothermic event, an absorption of energy instead of a release of energy, one of the things you get is black holes. That's one of the natural things that we see that happen. You go, wait a minute, but isn't a wormhole just like a black hole as well? So you look at it, you naturally go, wow, that could be the answer to how we actually produce a real wormhole. And then, this leads to a lot of questions about what those videos mean, which I hope to delve into. But the thing that struck me is, okay, you see one video like that, you're like, okay, I'm never going to believe just one. Well, like, there's got to be more. But then there's another video. It's called Satellite Video Airliner and UFOs. And when I saw this video, I went, wait, there's 2 videos of the same event from completely different perspectives. And this is when I got interested back in August. I'm like, okay, this is already like top of the charts in terms of like what you could ask for in a UFO thing. And I had been interested in the UFO phenomenon for a few years, but never saw anything like super, super compelling before this. And it was the research into specifically what is called the satellite video, which we now know only relatively recently in the last few months is not satellite video at all. One of the big criticisms people would give, and if you can cue up the quote unquote satellite video, that would be great. One of the big criticisms people would give of this video is that, well, why don't the clouds move? Why does it look like, why is the person able to move the perspective of the screen, but I don't see, like, why is it, if it's a satellite, why does it not look like the satellite's moving along with the video? And it turns out that we have this footage, this capability called Wide Area Motion Imagery, WAMI. The WAMI footage is basically able to take like a pod that you have on a drone or on a plane or on a satellite, and it can take sensor data and take that sensor data and it can beam it to a like relay satellite to a ground-based computer. And they can take all this data, accumulate all this data from multiple sensors, and they can produce like a virtual playback. It's real, but it's a virtual playback. So essentially, they have software that you log into, and you can find examples of this. The one I recommend people look up is, I think it's called Argus. Is like one of the most recent iterations, but still goes back about 10 years. And essentially, it's a wide area view. Imagine of like a range of a whole city, like 100 square miles or something, and you're zoomed out on your software, and then you can press a button, and a window will pop up. And now in that window, you're looking at a zoomed in view, and it's video of a person walking down the street or an airplane in the sky flying around. Now, you might need to have assets set up to pull this data in the high enough quality to have that level of playback ability, but essentially becomes DVR spy capability playback of anywhere you want. And that's what we're actually looking at. And probably the reason why the person who uploaded thought it was satellite video was that they saw the NROL 22 in the bottom left. It says NROL 22, and it has these coordinates, which indicate a location on planet Earth, just like Google Earth, actually. And the NROL 22, they probably just Googled it like anybody would, is the first launch of the space-based infrared system in 2006, SBIRS. You hear it's been referenced by a few people on various podcasts, but it's basically the system that we use to detect missiles ICBMs. Like the moment the heat signature goes off, we've got persistent coverage of the whole planet, and we can tell instantly. And I'm going, wait, well, that's pretty wild that that's the satellite it says in the bottom left of this video. Pretty specific. And it turns out that satellite too, it's not the satellite like took the video of this. This is the big misnomer that people have. It's actually probably, and this is a speculative, of course, it's a millennia orbit. So low Earth orbit satellites just go right around the Earth very rapidly. Geostationary orbit satellites are really far away, like 40 times further away than the low Earth orbitals, and they're just stationary because of how far they are away. Millennia orbit satellites, that's like the one that NROL-22 is. It has this egg-shaped orbit that goes north to south around the planet. And the benefit of this is that you have a lot of the time, you have line of sight to ground-based computer that you want to beam information to. So it's actually perfect for a relay satellite. And you can also connect to so much, so you have a perfect field, like a really good field of view of the planet as well. So highly likely that that's what's going on in that video. And the real kicker was when somebody on Reddit found out that there's a mouse cursor comes on the screen. And to me, it seems pretty clear they're like pressing the middle mouse button to move the screen around. And you can see this mouse cursor come on the screen. The screen only moves when the mouse is still, which would indicate they're using the same analog to move the perspective as they use to move the mouse. And someone found out that, oh, well, the background, when we see the plane moving, it's kind of jerky. It turns out it's 6 frames per second. This is consistent with Whammy capabilities. Between 2 and 10 frames per second is what they think. And because it's like pulling all that data and building this thing, it can't produce it that fast. But the mouse was 24 frames per second. Why is it different? Well, it's different because somebody was actually logged in to a Citrix session, a remote terminal session. They were logged in from their computer to a database somewhere else. And it turns out that's the reason for the frame rate discrepancy. The actual real software they were logged into and looking at was 6 frames per second. Their mouse was on their local computer that was logged into the Citrix session. So that's the reason why you saw the frame rate discrepancy. And there's just no way any hoaxer is going to build that into their fake video or whatever. I mean, what a weird detail. So that's how I got it started, because I saw that. I went, holy crap, these videos are actually real. And the reason why I knew that was so powerful is that I've worked in healthcare IT for 20 years, and every single client and hospital I've ever worked for, we logged into their database with Citrix. And so you would use it and you would see the little lag difference between you being logged in. I went, wow, that's probably real, US software that they're using right there, or maybe third party, I don't know. And that's when I kind of was just like really like all about pushing it and saying like the media, begging the media to pick it up. I don't want to be the person who had to do all this. I wanted anybody else, journalists, Tucker Carlson, Michael Schellenberger, any mainstream media. And I learned that none of them wanted to touch this. And I thought, no one wants to solve the mystery of this missing plane that like is out there. Because I forgot to mention, during the same time, people found out that is definitely Malaysian Airlines Flight 370. They looked in the metadata, even though the video didn't say explicitly, and they found MH370 on there. People were trying to say, no, you're just guessing. It can't be that. It's an exact overlay of the plane, And so people are starting to realize, like, oh crap, this is a real event. That plane is still missing. So no journalist wanted to pick it up. And I just decided one day, like, okay, I guess I'm the guy. It's not out of hubris or anything, but literally no one else wanted to do it. I was actually afraid at the time that there might be a bunch of other people that might even like steal my work and what have you. I was so naive back then. Turned out nobody wanted to steal my work. I put out one post. You can probably still find it, where I'm like, just mention all my stuff is copyrighted that I put out there, because I thought somebody was going to make a movie and steal like my story or something. Now I'm like, yeah, no, this is like too far out there for anybody.
Yeah. So I mean, you're the guy.
The origin story.
You're the guy, Ashton. I mean,
you are. Yeah. I don't know of any copycats. I haven't seen it. And again, I'm on X quite a bit. I'm on social media like that. I'm not on Reddit as much, but you can generally tell when things get to kind of a boiling point and the zeitgeist hits everybody, and they start running with it themselves parallel to you, and you're like, that's my, talking point, or that's my theory, etc. But you are the only one that is still taking up that mantle, which is interesting because there's so many taboo topics, UFOs, this, that, whatever. This is the only one I've heard of, other than some other major conspiracies that aren't in the same vein, where, like you're saying, it's just persona non grata. Nobody wants to talk about it, which I always thought it was interesting when this happened in general, was that, hey, we just lost an entire airliner and literally no one cares. Like, I would ask people at work and they'd be like, what do you even talk about? And I'm like, we live in modern times. We don't lose jetliners.
It's like a week. And it was gone out of the news. Well, it was probably about a month.
It was really quick.
But then it disappeared. The story disappeared for years until really, Ashton started bringing everything back around.
Exactly.
I mean, it was talked about. You had the Netflix documentary as well. But you're right. Like, they talked about it, but it was so bizarre how some of the, like, you would hear these narratives that come out, and I still hear them now, which really, I think, speaks to ultimately a level of brainwashing that we're all possibly susceptible to.
Sure.
Which is that we just repeat kind of what we're told to think by our trusted authority, whoever our trusted authority is. And people don't ask the basic questions. And so one of them is, like you just said, how is a plane disappear and nobody seems to know where it went? There's no way that can be true in 2014. There's just no way. So one of the first things you investigate is, or we investigated, was what are the surveillance capabilities? So we just mentioned this Whammy footage, which is, I don't think anyone even realized in 2025, is that people are now just realizing we have this capability. People are still thinking we're looking through satellites as they're flying around through orbit. No, it's much more complicated than that and more sophisticated. And we found out the sound surveillance system. I didn't know even this existed, but it's been around for like 70 years. We used to use it to literally pinpoint all the Russian submarines anywhere in the ocean.
Yep.
So we have this sound surveillance system, this acoustic system that can pinpoint every single Russian submarine anywhere in the ocean. And we declassified it in the 90s because it was too obsolete. And you're telling me that a plane crashed into the ocean, and in 2014, the Navy didn't know where it hit the ocean, even though just recently that little submersible, the Titan submersible, imploded, and the Navy admitted later on, 5 days later, that they knew exactly when it imploded and they had the acoustic detection for it.
Absolutely.
And they went and picked it up and they knew exactly where it was too. Like, no question, here's the triangulated location of it for a tiny submersible. But you're telling me Boeing 777, this plane is the size of a city block, that hit the ocean somewhere, and the Navy's just, they're just, no, it don't happen. No way. So we look.
That's the cop out every time that, and then the public, again, like you're saying, it's kind of like a giant Milgram experiment, what you're saying, right? Like just trusting the authority, trusting the doctor going, go ahead and push the button, shock the experimenter on the other side. It's fine. I'm telling you to do it. And it's funny because they do. They go, well, nobody knows. They've looked for it. They can't find it. But again, they don't know about these technologies that are out there. They don't know about geospatial, monitoring. They don't know about a lot of it. And it's, again, because we're not meant to know a lot of that, right? Like it's the Wizard of Oz and pulling back the curtain. And they go, no, we don't know how to do this. Like you said, you gave a great example of the submersible going off, and they were like instantly. I mean, they knew right then and there.
Well, remember the spy balloon that went over Lake Huron, over the Great Lakes, that was shot down. They said they couldn't find that. And,
sure.
And we talked about that former patient that you had that, what is it? The Geos or NOAA or Geospatial. David Grush was a part of that organization.
It's like the NRO, National Reconnaissance Office. But they have satellites that can read a stick of butter from 4 miles up. Like those are actual satellites, but I don't know how many of those there are and how many blanket kind of the globe to really take it all in. But I had a patient who was a former aerospace
There are
engineer.
only 5 optical. Yeah, there are only 5 optical satellites left, I found out. Otherwise, the rest now are like infrared, or like the same thing they were talking about, the pyramid, synthetic aperture radar. But yeah, and now we're getting to the point where, what they really have now probably would alarm us. My guess is it's kind of like the Dark Knight, where you can map the whole inner of a place where like your ceilings don't even protect you anymore. They can figure out exactly where you are.
Right.
And I'm just totally hypothetical, but to your point, yeah, of course they don't want people to know about this. And you can make strong argument. I think at some point we should talk a little bit about the national security implications of all of this once you guys get freaked out enough. Maybe you won't get, but you brought up really great analogies. The other one is the Ash conformative experiment too. So,
right.
And like the Lake Huron thing, by the way, totally agree with you. Like they said they shot the thing down, they have it, then they don't have it, and they didn't get it. Then some guy's out there making a video, and then his like YouTube channel gets taken down. It's like, okay,
oh wow,
something like you can't trust any bullshit they're saying. But to your point, like let me point out the Ash conformity experiment back to MH370. Is like, so first of all, nobody, even before I investigated this, I was already at least like, the United States probably knows what happened. Like, I don't really believe they just have no idea. And the way they acted when the plane disappeared was pretty suspicious. They just were very quiet when you would imagine they should have like a lot of data about an airplane that disappeared and then hit the ocean. One of the other things people are saying is, and often they'll say is, well, what about the debris? They found some debris. But here's the crazy part. There's a lot of good images out there that you can find if you just Google like MH370 debris, and it'll have like image where the search is in the South Indian Ocean near the Australia. But all the debris that was found, all of it was found in Africa. That's the wrong continent entirely. In fact, I remember back when the debris first started getting found, it wasn't found by the official search. Official search to this day has still found nothing ever. Random people just started picking up debris off the coast of Africa. Why was it random people? Because no one thought debris was going to go to Africa. They were expecting the debris to wash ashore in Australia. All the drift models show that the vast bulk, if not all of the debris, would wash ashore in Western Australia. And somehow they've just Ash conformity experiment brainwashed us into literally looking at a map that even has time periods on it going up to 2 years. And even after 2 years, the debris would not drift to Africa. Even after 2 years. And it's due to the way the currents go the wrong direction. And we'd still brainwash us into going, yep, that makes sense. That debris there can also be consistent with a plane crash in the middle of nowhere where we never found anything. It's like, if that were a movie plot, people would just think it's so stupid. Now, so the answer to the question I just proposed to everybody is, well, either the debris is real, and that's from MH370, or those satellite pings that lead us to believe in the South Indian Ocean is the place where the plane went down is real, but it has to be one or the other. One of those things has to be fake to some degree. And the answer is actually pretty obvious when you dig into it. The satellite pings were clearly just faked. They faked the satellite pings in the middle of nowhere. That's why it makes no sense why the plane would like make this weird turn and then just fly out for like 5 hours till it runs out of fuel and then somehow crash without leaving a debris field anywhere. Oh, that's one more thing I want to say is that this is the other psyop. The first thing people should wonder when a plane disappears, where's the debris field? Doesn't matter where, anywhere on Earth, just where is the debris field? Over the ocean, over the land, like where on Earth did this plane go down? Because anywhere this plane goes down, there's going to be a massive debris field. Massive. If the plane is shot down out of the sky, it's going to be the biggest debris field because the parts are going to fly everywhere. No possible way to hide it. If it hits the ocean, not only is it going to break apart in the ocean, upon any type of landing, doesn't matter what you try, it's going to rip apart, and the parts are going to scatter all over. They would be visible from satellites from space for days, easily visible. That's how big the debris field would be. On land, there would be scorched trees and everything, So why is nobody just asking, like, where's the debris field? There was one guy. This will be the last thing I'll say unless you jump in, because this is going to kind of loop it all back together. You'll like it. Only one person of all my research on mainstream media, like videos and stuff like that, that actually mentioned no debris field means no crash. And it was the French explorer guy that died on the Titan sub.
What?
I can't pronounce his name, but
holy cow.
I have a clip of him, and it's only him on CNN going, if there's no debris field, there can be no crash. And then he later died in that Titan sub. It's pretty wild.
Well, it's like saying there's fire without smoke. You know what I mean? Where there's smoke, there's fire. Without that, you have the two are kind of mutually exclusive, right? That's why.
I'm not saying that's why he died, by the way. I'm just saying it's just like interesting that he happened to be the guy that, was just speaking rationally to people. And this is why I tell people, like, you know what? Don't believe the videos if you don't want to. If I was grifting people, I would certainly be trying to sell them a more plausible story than what I'm out there pushing. Even without the videos, you can just tell there's clearly a cover up at play here. And I don't know how you can't believe the United States government's the one. It's got to be state sponsored at this point, just that high level. It's not some random, it's not like a 9/11 type situation that we're dealing with here. We're dealing with something more subversive, something that's influencing us through our media, through the way that we consumed it. Because they looked into the plane for like, it was big story for like a month. It was all, and no one's asking these questions like, what about our surveillance system? Only one time was that asked on CNN. And it was by a commentator who I've never seen before, still before or after, but she asked it to Dianne Feinstein, said, here's some video of the bin Laden, like surveillance of his compound. And it was like super detailed. You can see dudes like working out in front of the bin Laden compound. And she's like, how do we not have surveillance of like MH370? And Dianne Feinstein, rest in peace now, or maybe not, depending on your politics. But she was like, well, I can't really comment on that. We might not, but I can't really comment on capabilities. This is like, no, like nobody would give a straight answer on any of that. So just wild.
Wow. It's a lot to digest there. I mean, yeah, it blows my mind. Again, it's something that at the time it was really wild. And as it died down, I kind of, again, just, I didn't know where else to go and dig into, and there wasn't really much coming out in the way of information until this most recent foray into it, about a year ago. But yeah, it's really interesting how it was just kind of like, don't look this way. I mean, that's usually the telltale sign of I'm going to look this way. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If you tell me there's nothing there, there's likely something there. It just doesn't make any sense because of the examples you've already used of being able to locate wreckage and our acoustic capabilities within the water. And yeah, it's just very perplexing.
Exactly.
Yeah. And there's some lessons to be learned too, though, is that like they hoodwinked us for sure on this. Like people were not on it, like part of what you said is like, you were the first, you were saying like, I'm the only one who's like kind of talking about this, is that if you look at all the other investigators, they're all convinced that this plane went down the South Indian Ocean because of these satellite pings. And that's why it's so important that people listen and replay what I just mentioned about the debris and the satellite pings not being consistent with one another. Is that the other big brainwashing like narrative I hear is people say, well, the ocean's really big. It probably just disappeared anywhere. But here's the thing. If the satellite or pings are legit, then they have the plane down to an arc where it's running out of fuel. There's nowhere else for it to go. So either that arc and those pings are correct, and that means that the ocean is not that really big. There's a specific search area the plane must be within. Well, spoiler alert, they already searched everywhere there above and below water with these submarines that can map the ocean floor. Found nothing. So really, when people say the ocean's really big, okay, are the pings correct or not? Because if the pings are not correct, there are satellite coordinates that I mentioned in that satellite video that says NRL 22. And those coordinates are the Nicobar Islands. And based on the proximity of the timing of the release of this video, a few weeks after the plane disappeared, it being published on YouTube, that location is the same location where everybody's been saying for the last 11 years that the plane turned and started flying down in the South Indian Ocean. So if you were making a cover story to cover up what happened in those videos, all the plane would have to do is just keep flying straight from the last military radar plot. And you would just have to invent some satellite pings that claim from that point forward, the plane was going in the South Indian Ocean. And that's exactly what they did. If you look at the data, exactly at 1840, when the plane would have been at those coordinates, all of a sudden the data changes on the Inmarsat pings. And it's just one ping every hour for 5 hours, 10 rows of data total. That's it. That's the totality of the data. Some stuff that I tell people, my nephew, who's 7 years old, could have faked it in like a day, and they had like 10 weeks to fake it. You're like, come on, guys, it's crazy. One last point I want to make is that people are like, oh, somebody faked those videos. I'm like, who do you think has the capability to fake those? You think that somebody faked those videos, but nobody could fake 10 rows on an Excel spreadsheet? Like, come on, like faking the Excel spreadsheet data is way easier than faking these videos for sure.
Right.
And that's the only thing that if those satellite pings are fake and the plane never went to the South Indian Ocean, then the story that makes the most sense is the one that I've been proposing that is being told in the videos, even though it's crazy to believe that we could do that. But if you're somebody that's open-minded in the UFO community, it shouldn't be that crazy. It really shouldn't.
No, and I wanted to ask you, do you know the elevation of that big black hole opening? Is there any correlation with, from that video or a timestamp perhaps of correlating that? I want to call it a portal. I don't know what else to call it. I mean, that's what it looks like to me. And boom. And do they know how high in the air that black hole happened?
So one of the big clues is the clouds. The clouds in both videos are cumulus clouds. They're the same clouds in both videos. And cumulus clouds only form at low altitudes, like really low altitudes, like under 5,000 feet. So that has to be, and even in ideal conditions, they can't form much higher than that. So at best, that's like 7,000 feet. So that plane is low. I mean, you can't have your device on before you get above 10,000 feet, right? So that plane is low. And that's huge because you'll hear people, anybody that says that we're looking at contrails coming off that plane is straight up disinformation agent. Why would anyone call it contrails when contrails only form above 18,000 feet? And you're looking at cumulus clouds in the video. It can't be contrails. It has to be smoke coming out of the back of the plane. So anyone trying to say it's contrails is literally trying to use wordplay to prevent you from thinking that it's smoke coming out of the back of the plane, because the smoke gives away the whole story of what really happened on this plane. Is there was a fire. I mean, you're looking at these crazy videos and you're realizing watching these crazy videos, the Orbs from a plane, that there's smoke coming out of the back of the plane. And you're going, that's weird.
Yeah, I didn't know.
And you're like, huh. Yeah, there's smoke billowing out of the back of the plane. And when you zoom in on the thermal video that we were watching at the beginning, you can see this heat signature in the looks like the belly of the plane changing constantly. So we, did the investigation into engineers about Boeing 777s reached out to me, looked into how they're configured. And the story that made the most sense is that there's a fire in the cargo bay, probably in the forward cargo bay. And the smoke is going through the air conditioning systems. And then the hot smoke is going out of the air conditioning, the heat exhaust ports that are right next to the landing gear in that position. And what looks like contrails coming from the engine is not coming from the engine at all. And you can tell when you look at the very zoomed in part of the thermal video. You can tell that it's actually like coming from the hull of the plane and wrapping around both sides of the hull. Probably because of the plane maybe either descending slightly or whatever it might be, but just, fluid mechanics, basically. So it's actually smoke. And it turns out, I was like, okay, well, is there any, I had never heard of the fire event related to the plane. And I started looking and I realized there is a fringe theory about a fire event on this plane. And if you just say fringe in the perspective, it just didn't get any attention. But I found two different experts that were sure that it was a fire event. I found a Wired article that talked about a fire. We found out that there was 500 pounds of lithium-ion batteries, 2 pallets stacked in the forward cargo bay that basically nobody had reported on. I mean, it got reported on, but nobody really talks about, not in these Netflix documentaries, not in these YouTube videos about the plane, which are, by the way, super dangerous and banned now from cargo passenger planes because of how dangerous they were. Like, okay, guys, like we have our mode, and the Malaysian Airlines lied about it until like 2 weeks after the plane, till they had a cover story already developed. Then they told people, oh yeah, we had all these dangerous batteries on the plane.
What the heck?
Well,
yeah, they told the truth. You can fact check me. March 20th, I believe, was the day they finally told the truth. Plane disappeared March 8th. So dude, 12 days.
So there's a lot of threads running here. So you got the plane. The plane is possibly on fire from what it looks like with these lithium-ion batteries, and then these orbs come in, or these whatever they are, UAPs, come in, get it triangulated and circle it.
Perfect formation.
And then it blips out. So was the plane in trouble and going down, and they I'm trying to put it all together on what angle this is coming from anymore, because the way I had seen it, and I didn't know it was smoke or from a fire necessarily. I thought that was, again, the contrails, and like you said, and that these orbs just, kind of transport it,
Since we're limited, what I'll say is that there was like 18 witnesses that all corroborate the fire as well, including key witnesses that speak English perfectly. Mike McKay saw that when the plane was on fire, when it first happened. And then Catherine T. And these are in the basically the spot where it began. And then Catherine T is in the spot like within minutes of when we see those videos happen. So we have two really good witnesses. And then we have some in the middle that also basically corroborate a fire type event or emergency event. And the flight path corroborates it. So it's crazy how much evidence there is for that. And I initially thought, I must be telling the story well, just like you, was like, well, was this a rescue then? What's going on here?
Yeah.
Right. Why is there fire here? So for a while, if you watch my appearances from like October of 2023 through early 2024, you'll see that I was like, the thing that's a fire, like maybe there's a VIP on board this plane. Maybe they were trying to rescue these semiconductor scientists that like everybody said was the motive that happened in this plane.
Yeah.
I was just coming up with stories like, I don't know how. And so then this letter to Ashton Forbes randomly got posted on YouTube. Weirdest shit that's ever happened to me still to this day. I hope it stays the weirdest thing that ever happened, because it's like super highly produced. It's 11 minutes long, and it single-handedly was able to just take in all the evidence in a way that even my most ardent followers could not do. And I love you guys who are out there watching, but man, I knew right away that whoever wrote this letter with all these details, like they know as much about the case than I do, and I'm up there. So they basically imply that the whole thing, that basically the same evidence, but changes the story slightly to say that this was an espionage event or counter-espionage, and where these people, China was planning on stealing these scientists, and we basically stepped in and made sure that didn't happen, using like a Hollywood production like spy operation that starts with a fire and forcing the plane to deviate, and then at the rendezvous point, wherever that those coordinates or near those coordinates in the video, broke out the orbs. Now everything between, still there's a lot of speculation. One thing I'll say is that everybody kind of agrees that most, if not all, of the passengers are probably dead. And I don't think it was from the zap. I think the fire is what potentially did them in. In terms of like exactly how and why they do this, risk this, film this, because they're filming their own operation potentially on this, that's something only the government can really answer.
Yeah.
Oh, so you think the video is not some kind of like accidental group that filmed this, but there was some kind of monitoring.
Yeah, you want to see how your operation goes.
Happening. So if it was it was leaked by somebody that was on this Citrix call. This call.
Yeah, and that's a big question. Is people say, why are they filming? There is only one answer. That's an operation start to finish. The people filming that are the ones responsible for it, right? That's like you found a random video of a murder happening, and that's never been out there. Like the first person I'm going to is who the person who was filming that. They're probably the person who did it, right? Like, and that's really ultimately what happened here, which is why these videos, this is why if I'm being blackballed, which I know I am, at least on some podcasts, a lot of people aren't afraid to talk, but it's because what these videos show. Like if there was some angle people could take to say that was like aliens that zapped the plane and that you could sell that angle, I think I would be getting promoted on podcasts and generally. But because these videos explicitly show or implicate the United States government and U.S. military and CIA as being responsible and a cover up, that's the part where it's just like too far, because it means the authority is potentially not just hiding advanced technology stuff that looks straight up alien to us.
Yeah.
And maybe it is based on alien reverse technology. I don't know. But to your point, it's not just randomly out there filming this plane on fire that also happens to be missing for 11 years. And this is why I tell people that not only is it not some random hoaxer that made the videos, but even if you assume like the military could make this, they have the capability. Because if they can teleport something or zap something, then they probably have advanced AI and they can probably make stuff look really fake, or fake stuff look real as well. But the reason why that's not the case is because you don't make a video that implicates you. You make a video that implicates somebody else,
Yeah,
right?
great point.
So that's the problem with that line of thought. So ultimately, and I wish there was another answer. This is why I'm like, guys, yeah, I guess you can call me a conspiracy theorist, because it's like I'm just coming to the only conclusion I can come to about this, which is the United States government's responsible. And it makes sense because the whole like pilot did it thing never made sense. Like just too sophisticated for a plane to disappear.
Right.
Like, yeah, there are ways where like you can turn it off the ACARs and therefore like, you know, make it so it's not tracking flight radar, but that requires like knowledge of engineering that pilots don't necessarily just have.
Right.
And the whole thing screams like multiple people would need to do it, you know? And so really when you just throw away your biases about conspiracy theories and what have you, you go like only really 3 people that can do this. It has to be state sponsored. So we're talking like Russia, China, United States, or, you know, maybe Israel or Iran, potentially something, you know, maybe. And the crazy part is we looked into that too. And Russia was pointing the finger at the US Navy. There's this weird, maybe real, maybe not Russian GRU report that you can Google and find out there that claims that Russia was unsure or like confused as to why the US Navy would intercept and abduct MH370, which at the time seemed like Russian disinformation. But now when you're looking at it in the light of those videos, you're going like, holy shit, they knew. Like there you're looking at it right there. And then China. What did China do after this plane disappeared? Well, they hacked the Malaysian government. They hacked the Minister of Transportation the next day. They used the click here, the plane was found. And of course they clicked there. And then they hacked their whole system.
Oh, God.
And they stole the crisis meeting minute notes about the missing plane and classified information about the plane. This is reported publicly. I'm like, wait, what's classified about a missing plane the day after it disappeared?
Right when you said
why
that,
is China hacking them to steal it? Right? Well, now you're going, oh, now it smells like spycraft, right? Now it smells like government operations. China's trying to figure out what was going on. And then this is not done yet. China then, 4 days after the plane disappeared, around the same time that U.S. intelligence sources start leaking to CNN and Western media that the plane went into the South Indian Ocean after people were searching in all the wrong spots for 4 days. Around the same time, these satellite pictures just like appear on this, I think it's the Chinese Minister of Science. Also, some satellite pictures just appear on this website. And it gets reported on for, I still can't figure out why, but it gets reported on as a debris field in the South China Sea. And we had already searched there and found nothing. And I guess they searched again and found nothing again in the spot they claimed these pictures were taken. But it's crazy. If you look at the pictures, and you guys should do this, Google MH370 Chinese satellite images. I don't know what to say, but it looks just like the Whammy footage, the satellite video. It looks like 3 objects around another object, and it looks like these low altitude clouds, and you're just going, but it looks like it's further away. Almost like China had satellites that aren't quite as, they don't have quite the resolution capability. And it almost looks like someone just leaked those. I think I'm the only person that said this, is that, and it'll be awesome if it's true, is that I was like, those almost look like a message to like the people that did it, because the only people who understand those images would be the people that pulled it off. And it's almost like, we know what you did.
Exactly.
Now the crazy part is, yeah, those images are too low quality to like really know the science of how they pulled it off. You just know they pulled a magic trick. But the thermal video, and why this is a topic of national security, that video gives everything away. The thermal video gives all the science away, how they did it, how to pull it off, what it takes. And to the point where like I've gone from being a random healthcare guy to now like moving my way up the chart of 0-point energy physics experts, you know? Right. So it's like, that's how powerful those videos are. And so you can imagine what it could do for a foreign intelligence that knows the videos are real and gives it to their best physicists and scientists that go figure this out.
Yeah.
You know?
You were saying that you kind of would have expected more engagement or maybe conversations with maybe somebody that could dispel what you're looking at, or have you gotten any professionals, physicists, astrophysicists, aerospace engineers, anybody that I know you talked about some Boeing engineers themselves, but have you gotten anybody to really push back against your theory? Go, no, this doesn't make sense or that, or is it more they don't engage with it because they know they can't really refute it?
There are people that do engage, and there's people that think certain parts of this or that are incorrect, but that's true about like literally any topic. The example I give too, and this is why you have to be careful about debunking stuff, is the Sean Ryan, Matt Libelsberger, the Cybertruck explosion guy.
Oh yeah,
that really went away quick. Yeah,
it did. Yeah, it did. He was talking about anti-gravity drones, which was pretty weird.
Yep.
That's why I reported on that, because I was like, this is weird. This is going away. But anyway, so Sean Ryan gets an email from this guy. They find out days later that this guy was like trying to whistleblower to Sean Ryan, and for like the next day, everybody's debunking the email, saying that the email's fake. Sean Ryan faked the email. It's got all these things that don't look right. This is the same thing that people do with the MH370 videos. And what it turned out in that case was every single thing people were saying had a rational explanation. Sean Ryan circled the wagons, did this huge event in like X space, and basically had all his lawyers and everybody been like, my credibility is top notch. We didn't fake anything. Anybody saying this is full of crap. And he made it go away. Bravo to him, honestly. But that's what I want to point out, is that and I'm not saying this to avoid scrutiny. I have no problem with scrutiny whatsoever. I'm just saying, like, just because someone says something doesn't look right doesn't mean that it is. Now, with respect to like debates, I've challenged basically anybody to a respectful debate about any aspects of the missing plane just in general, or the videos if they want, or the physics. Now, arguments about VFX are difficult for many reasons. One, because the videos just aren't fake to begin with, so it's just gonna be difficult. It's gonna get to a point where this doesn't look right to me, or this does. From a forensic standpoint, straight forensic, nobody's ever pointed any forensic issues with the plane, with the videos. Like, there's clearly a seam line here where somebody stitched together two clips or something, right? Which is powerful to say, because it's pretty clear from looking at a lot of the frames, especially the frames when the plane zoomed in the thermal video, you would have had to create those frames by scratch, one by one. The heat signature is morphing in every single frame on the belly of the plane. So it's not like you could use a template and just have that. So forensically, the videos are basically perfect. The issues that people come up with are, well, I think somebody did this and used this to build these perfect videos, even though there's no forensic issues anywhere with the videos on any frames. So it's hard to have a lot of discussions about that, but I haven't shied away from it. Mick West, I think, is the number one debunker in the UFO community.
He's a big one.
I've never been a huge fan, but yeah, everybody goes to him for everything, right? And so people did when this was happening. And weirdly, he was one of the first people to say that he would not even look at this stuff in videos, but obviously they got way too big and he couldn't ignore them anymore. And I mean, 5 different people tried to set up podcast debates with him, and he wouldn't do it.
Wow.
Which, no, I was happy to do it. I mean, I have really basic questions, like just the same ones that I would ask you guys here, right? And that's why I think people are afraid to just generally discuss it, because I put the questions out there ahead of time, ready for people. No one wants to go on an interview and try to explain how a plane crashes without leaving a debris field. Like, you're already putting yourself into a logical trap. And then the other thing I'd say too about this, because I don't really have, I don't know what to say about debates that nobody will really actually do, is that it's not enough to just poke holes in something,
Agreed.
Is that when you're really doing an investigation, you have to be able to come up with a comprehensive story. And my biggest criticism of the debunker crew, because I consider myself skeptic actually, is that if you're really a skeptic, you're trying to come up, what's the story that makes the most sense? You're never going to have a situation, or rarely, where all the evidence lines up perfectly. You're rarely going to have a situation like that. But you do want to find the story that makes the most sense given the totality of the evidence. And that's what I've tried to do in this case. And I'm open to being wrong on any aspects of it. It's not like I was saying before, if there was an easier story to tell, I think that that actually made sense with respect to the evidence, I'd be happy to tell it. It'd be easier to sell to people than what I've been trying to tell people now, which is that we're hiding teleportation and fusion technology that's basically free energy.
So, and to that point too, okay, so the plane is in trouble. It's on fire. Why even scoop it up? Why teleport it? Why?
Yeah.
What's the end game with that? Because if what it sounds like was China was trying to possibly get some very intelligent scientists and kind of make them work for them in a certain way. But if that plane's going to go down and crash anyways, why go through the effort of? Do you think it was just hey, well, our operation's done and we really don't want anybody to know anything about this? Or I don't know. I guess I'm theorizing it might make more sense to let it crash and then everybody passes away. And
there's a few different possibilities too, and it could be some sort of like something went wrong in the operation, so that we don't really know about because we don't know the full story of what they were trying to do. You could say that they were trying to save the scientists and like basically retain them. Like maybe they have institutional knowledge about how to create something related to that technology we saw.
Yeah.
The first thing I thought is they must be connected to technology in some way, these guys on board the plane, in a way that we and the public don't really know about. Well, it turns out microchips are one of the ways to interact with this 0-point energy and create these effects.
Yeah. What about Diego Garcia as well? I don't know if a lot of people are familiar with that. As far as it's a military base on an island near where this happened. I'm not sure, but I heard also in various discussions or posts that maybe it was rerouted there, the plane diverted there, and that we scooped up those scientists on the U.S. side. Do you know any tangents about that, or have you heard any information on that angle as well?
Yeah, and it was the letter to me is actually called Diego Garcia Whistleblower, a letter to Ashton Forbes.
Okay.
And that letter says that basically, to answer your previous question, this was a show of force. So not only did we set the plane on fire, divert it, screw up their plan, but then it was just a big middle finger.
Wow.
Big F you to our adversaries. Now, did they want the MH370 videos to leak? Of course not, because those videos tell them how to build this thing that they did. But if all you have is this grainy, super far away still image, right, that you can't tell shit other than your plane was there and now it's not there anymore, then that's pretty damn scary, if you're our adversary. I still think that's bold as hell if that's true, but that's what the letter to Ashton Forbes says. And after I thought about it, I went, that's crazy, but it actually makes the most sense given the story, because I don't think they were just going to break this out to rescue people. So and I found somebody else saying the exact same thing. Joseph P. Farrell, who weirdly enough also has written like books about plasma and how like plasma orb stuff. I found an old audio interview he did days after the plane disappeared. And I tried to reach out to him because I'm like, dude, how did you know about the stuff you were saying? He's talking about maybe somebody developed a super weapon. Maybe somebody figured out teleportation. And he's going, maybe this was the only way. He goes, the only reason I think of anyone do this is it would be a message to somebody else, like one of the main countries doing a message. And I'm going, what? Because this is after I figured this all out. I'm going, how? This was him from 2014, days after the plane disappeared. I'm like, who is he talking to?
Wow.
With no videos, no evidence coming, is directly on. And then the only reason why he didn't stick with it, because he even figured out it must be related to these engineers on board the plane, like because he's all connected to advanced technology and stuff. And he's like, well, I would just shoot a missile at it if I was going to take it out. Why would I do some advanced technology on the plane? And it's crazy because that's the same question you're now asking me that he was wondering. So it seems like, to answer your question, it must have been a bold move by our intelligence community, by our military. Yeah. They thought that whatever those guys had, it was worth doing this. Either maybe we got fed up with China stealing technology and science from us. Maybe it was just a show of force. I mean, I would say I'm already afraid of flying on airplanes. I'm way more afraid now. And if I knew the U.S. military had their sights set on me, I'd just assume that I'm doomed every time I get on a plane, basically.
Well, it kind of makes sense too. What you're saying now is more I think about it, like, okay, well, if we shot it down or a country shot it down, then there's actually going to be evidence to look at. Right here, there's nothing to look at.
Yes.
Right. So it makes sense like, yeah, we're just going to make this go away.
Yes.
Like literally make it go away.
Well, I want to bring...
You do it to hide the plane.
Yeah.
Exactly. And one thing I wanted to kind of backtrack a little bit, the Matthew Leivelsberger Cybertruck incident and some of that stuff where they talked about the Chinese being involved with the drones, that it being Chinese technology, and if that is the case, and a good friend of ours of the show, I'm not going to mention his name, but he believes the drones are Chinese and says he's got some solid proof. I'm a little bit nervous to air that stuff on our show, but if that is the case, maybe they're showing a show of force to us, because from what I understand, they're not able to take those down. And, if there is some sort of ship off the coast and they're launching these things, well, why aren't we just bringing them down then? Well, maybe we're not able to. We don't have the technology. And so, the portal, that image of the poof of that cold portal opening up, it really does remind me of some of the footage coming from Skinwalker Ranch at Homestead 2, where they're filming with the FLIR and they're making, they have this gentleman that's chanting, and basically this purple black hole opens up that's over top of the outside of this old dilapidated building, and physically people were starting to get sick and ill, but they captured the whole thing on FLIR. And there's another video from Skinwalker Ranch as well, where this certain areas look completely cold, completely black, with this sort of purple around it. And it reminded me so much of the end of that video that you showed. So is this some kind of technology that, what's the experiment in the 1950s with the battleship, the USS?
Oh, Philadelphia?
Yeah, the Philadelphia experiment. And you mentioned the Navy earlier.
43.
They've been experimenting with this type of technology. Apparently, if you believe that conspiracy, which
I'll tell you what,
I think there's a lot of credence to it.
The story I heard on the Philadelphia experiment was from an old Coast to Coast AM with a gentleman who claimed to be enlisted at the time and was on the ship. And when it happened, there were certain people that were like basically fused in between the boat layers into the hulls. Like, it just, a lot of weird stuff happened, but the boat basically disappeared. But they had this device, energy reactor on it. The guy in the story said he basically time traveled.
Yeah.
It got so weird, where I was like, it was like, is this, I was swimming with thoughts, because it's one of the most fantastic stories I've ever heard that I've never heard. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's like the greatest unknown story to certain generations. But yeah, I mean, the U.S. Navy, especially, you get offshore, maybe we can't see it, the public, right? But it's a good spot to go out and do a live demo or a live test, things like that. So yeah, the water is kind of a playground for some of these things. But yeah, I mean, what kind of technology are we rocking? That's the real question. We've always kind of speculated, and we said when we were younger too, like, hey, if you see a plane in the air, we have something that's 50 to 60 years more technologically advanced than what we're seeing at all times. And with the rate and growth of technology too, how much is that amplified and compounded over the years to where the stealth bomber was cool. What's the last real covert piece of tech we've ever heard of or seen that we were blown away by recently? It's been decades. It just seems like it all stopped. It seems like just growth in all kinds of disciplines and in science and technology to the normal public. Yeah, we've got cell phones, et cetera, but where's our hoverboards? Where's our drones? We should be flying around in jetpacks. Like, we really did. We stagnated because that control net is over it. And, it's a slow drip of.
Where's our energy sources?
Oh, my goodness.
And we talk a lot about that. And it always gets brought up, because if you have free energy, you don't need money. You don't need this whole system of financial debt. You don't need really jobs at that point. If AI and the robots are going to be running anything anyways, what do we really have to do other than figure out how to get ourselves interstellar and get ourselves off planet? I mean, that seems to be like the trajectory of all beings that are, I guess, in the eyes of humans or bipedal creatures, to get off of the rock that they're born and to explore the cosmos. So are we heading in that direction right now? I think we've got so much technology in these orbs and these plasma balls that were filmed in New Jersey. The technology is wildly advanced, and I think if they admit that, the whole civilization is going to have to change, especially if we have these things are being powered by some sort of electrogravitic system, or Phelan technology is the word that our friend used. So let's talk about that a little bit, Ashton, is
Yeah, sure.
the free energy aspect of this technology, the anti-gravitic capabilities, and what that means for, are they rolling this stuff out right now?
Yeah. Oh yeah, and real quick, just to close up the last part, like I think the Navy, a lot of this goes back to the Navy, including the Philadelphia experiment. Which, yeah, the part that got weird about that was, okay, so you teleported this battle cruiser, but then this guy's saying like he went back in time and became somebody else, and then it got like real bizarre.
Yeah,
but I do think it wouldn't surprise me if that part of the story got added on, because I think if this is all real, that's a really good precursor to like when they figured this technology first out. Like they figured out the idea that you can bend space-time.
Yep.
And that's how teleportation is possible from Einstein's general relativity. That's how a wormhole, warp drive, these are all the same concepts in physics. So what if they figured it out that long and they've been hiding it all this time? Then when you look at the drone situation in the East Coast from a few months back, you're going, maybe you're right. Maybe that is China now sending us a message. Because now you look at it and you go, well, that means that all these countries are secretly hiding it. And they're all potentially trying to secretly reverse engineer, figure out this technology wherever it came from. If we figure it out, or if we figure it out from aliens, whatever it is, doesn't really matter. It does, but you get my point. Then who knows what's going on with that? Or what if it's like, this is another thing I threw out at the time, is what if that's our defense system and we can't admit to it because we're using that and we got them set up because we're afraid of an imminent attack. And we want to be ready like instantly to respond, even though our orbs are super fast. Like we want to be able to like instantly respond. So, and it also could be like something hybrid where it's like a defense contractor with some of this advanced technology floating around with their electrogravitic craft, and they can't admit it, and the government therefore can't admit it either. And so therefore they're like, it's been FAA approved, and but we're not shooting it down when it's infiltrating our military bases. Which, come on, this is insane to think that. You got to be crazy to think we would allow our adversaries to be doing that without shooting it down. And to your point, yeah, we can shoot them down. Like, and I also think, I don't know who's saying it, I'm not affiliated with anybody out there in the UFO community, but like Roswell and stuff, if we shot them down, it's not because it's because they have a vulnerability. Radar is the vulnerability, because they're using radar is essentially how you create a gravitational wave. You create a phase conjugate wave, and you're essentially creating stress in the medium. So if you figure out how the UFOs are flying, then the counter mechanism to the way they fly, you use the way they fly against them. And that's what radar is essentially doing, and how we can shoot them down. Because people would think, oh, well, these UFOs should be like invincible. They should never be able to crash. But it's like, just figure it out. And then once you figure out how they're flying, you just knock them over, and then they're going to fall over because they're essentially just abusing an aspect of reality. So what we found out.
Jake Barber talks about that. The latest whistleblower, he was on these retrieval programs where he's a helicopter pilot, and he's the one that reported the egg-shaped craft and the tetrahedron craft, and they're basically shooting different types of radar at these things and bringing them down.
And let me say that the difference between me and those guys is that I know what those guys are doing. Like, they probably know more. They say they know more, right, than what they can say publicly, and that they've got NDAs and stuff. And they're working within the confines of the system that has allowed them to speak about the topics they're allowed to speak on. So you'll rarely, if ever, hear them speak about stuff like, what's the energy source for a UFO? What about free energy? What about fusion? But if you ask some of the physics experts, like the Hal Puthoffs of the world, who was on a podcast, NASA podcast, and he was asked that question, he said, the energy source for the UFO is probably either some zero-point energy or a neutronic fusion, which is basically just a form of cold fusion that might be happening. So you think about it and you go, that's the national security issue. You're allowed to say that aliens are real. It's not a national security issue. Aliens existing is not a national security issue. But you're not allowed to say that we've figured out basically a free energy source.
Bingo.
That powers these UFOs. And now we're exploiting that. And to your point, maybe they've hit the technological singularity way before us, and they've already hit it a while back. And they know this is going to change all of civilization. It's not just like, yes, of course, the idea that there's other civilizations out there is going to be a mind F for people, a lot of people out there, sure. But the thing that will really like physically change all of civilization is like a new energy source that obsoletes all the old energy sources.
No doubt. We talk about that a lot on this show, is that is the tip of the iceberg. Isn't necessarily the beings and, you know, the 57 different varieties of aliens, but it's the technology, because once that's admitted, they have to admit that if these technologies are there, okay, then they have to admit the power systems, and then it completely takes us off the backed, you know, the dollar being backed by oil, the world reserve currency, the entire system that we have completely built on our civilization is burning fossil fuels, and that just all ends. And there's a lot of people making billions and billions of dollars that don't want to let that go.
I just think we're a society and humanity that can't thread the needle, right? You can't. It's like, again, we'll go back to the Batman movies, right? The last one, he had a device that was going to take water and turn it into basically free energy, but hey, lo and behold, somebody's going to switch it on as a bomb, right? So you can't give a gun to a baby, and we as a planet might have a decent amount of people that are like, give us the free energy, but maybe we're just not meant. Again, if there are other species out there or other life forms that have discovered this and have harnessed it as a power as well, we're just not capable as a global species to go, here's free energy, here's, you know, again, somebody's going to use it for nefarious ways, because I joke about this. Do you think if there are aliens that they have wallets, they get down here and like, damn, Jeff, you didn't fill up the UFO with gas at the last planet? Like, no, I think they're past those concepts, right? Like they're harnessing the power of their planet. They're harnessing the power of their suns and their stars around them, you know, just like a Dyson sphere, etc. And they're really to that point. And again, it's kind of like this might have fell in our lap, and maybe, yeah, we figured it out at a very small percentage of very high up people. But again, you throw that across the board. I don't think it's about societal crumble from belief systems falling apart. I just really think it's like you can't drop a pistol in a crib, because that baby's not going to know what to do with it. Man,
well,
I could be
hiding it too.
Yeah.
No, you're 100% right. That's the number one reason why I think they're hiding it. And I like to put myself in the perspective of the people who are like on the opposite end of it. And I've actually come to the point where maybe perhaps ironically, sadly, hilariously, however you want to look at it, you know, I might be on the tip of the spear of disclosing this technology, while I'm also saying that I don't really think we deserve it. And it is kind of like giving a gun to a baby. It really is.
Yeah.
But, you know, the counter argument to that too then is, well, how long are we going to wait? It seems like if the Philadelphia experiment's true, we've been hiding it for 80 years.
Exactly.
So I was like, are we thinking that if we wait another 100 years, humanity will like evolve into like a one gender unified hippie world? Like it's never going to happen. Right. So we got to just rip the Band-Aid off at this point. Like if something's going to happen because of this technology, it's going to happen. And the questions we should be having are, what are the safeguards that we should put in place that still allow us to have the positive aspects of it, while minimizing the risk that some idiot's going to destroy us all by pressing the wrong button because they got, you know, dumped by their girlfriend, or, you know, have an emotional reaction. Right. Now, part of the other problem is too, is that, well, what if somebody uses it for nefarious purposes? This is the number one reason why I'm disclosing it. Probably they already used it for nefarious purposes. They teleported an airplane.
Yeah.
And they gaslit us into thinking that like, oh, it just crashed into the ocean without leaving the debris field, and we didn't hear it or see it or anything. Sorry, guys. Like, so I look at that and go, well, they're already using it for evil purposes. That you could argue. So if they didn't do all that, then I think you could have taken more. They could have taken the more high ground. But now it's like, okay, well, you're already doing evil shit. How much worse can it really get? You're hiding this free energy technology. But the other reason why I just love having this conversation, because you have to like realize what we're really talking about here. We're talking about a post-scarcity, post-materialism world, and really, money doesn't matter anymore. I mean, to some degree, right away, people are going to take free energy devices, cold fusion device, whatever it is, off the grid, and they're going to have a decentralized cryptocurrency that the government can't touch, and that's going to get popular. You know, you're going to have stuff like that happening right away. But also, just like, what do we even do with our time if we have access to unlimited energy sources? And oh, by the way, like what these plasma orbs represent is that we have cracked fusion a long time ago. Like the form of the type of fusion that they talk about in Spider-Man 2, like the power of the sun in the palm of your hand, the type where there's no boundaries around it. Like it's just freely floating like that, which means that they've accessed unlimited energy. And the temperature of the orb shows that they're doing it at not temperatures equal to the sun. And that's the part that implies when I say free energy, it's really free energy is actually not about producing something from nothing. Free energy is about efficiency.
Yeah.
And cold fusion is really the idea that our laws of physics are not really complete, and that if space-time itself is not empty. And if this ends up being the case, and this is what Ken Shoulders, who is the father of exotic vacuum objects, these coherent balls of plasma, thought, is that now we can cheat the system. Now where before our closed circuit system could never be perfectly efficient, now we have an extra input coming in from this energy all around us, which now says basically we can have a perfectly efficient system or nearly perfectly efficient system if we set it up right. And this is how plasma is really the gateway to connecting to that energy, and how if you research what this cold fusion can do, it's not just free energy, although that's amazing. It's also transmutation of elements. Because fusion is happening, elements are transmuting. If you can control that process, like you know exactly how it works, the unified theory of everything, then in theory, you can make a Star Trek replicator that can produce any element you want.
Oh, wow.
And then it's just, so we're talking Star Trek replicators become technologically feasible. It's crazy to even say that. Now, not like we're going to build one immediately, but technologically it becomes feasible that it could be produced. So that's what's really at stake here. And when you think about that, like that overwhelmingly supersedes, okay, yes, aliens existing in the universe. It really makes you start to wonder, like, if they're hiding something that huge about just science and physics and reality, okay, why? And is it even more than just we would destroy ourselves? Is it more like, why are we on this planet again if theoretically free energy technology is possible, and that's also, by the way, the means to teleport stuff like we saw in the videos? But if we can do that, one more rant I want to go on real quick is that,
sure.
Keep in mind the videos we're looking at. If that's teleportation, it's like Miguel Alcubierre's warp drive. The big crazy thing about it is it's 3 orbs doing it to anything they want. That's just an airplane flying in the sky. It's not a shuttle, space shuttle, or a flying saucer. If they can teleport a random airplane, then that's like really advanced, because it means that we don't need to be in some magical UFO to teleport from this place to Mars or something like that.
Exactly.
So it actually, it opens the door to interstellar travel entirely.
It's a Stargate.
Yep. And even Stargates could be real. So you look at all this and you go, okay, we could travel anywhere with this. So, oh boy, why are they hiding that from us? Like, does that mean that we were stranded on this planet a while back? And like, here's the thought that is creeping up on my list, and then I'll let you guys kind of give your thoughts, is that what if it turns out that people figured out this technology pretty much for every civilization out there is like giving a gun to a baby? And some civilization at some point saw this destruction, saw that the reason why we don't see other civilizations is because they're constantly wiping themselves out with this super free energy technology. And they decided, you know what? The only way to stop this from happening is that we have to give ourselves amnesia. We got to go eternal sunshine of the spotless mind on ourselves here. We got to forget our past and forget the technology. And we're going to just go to some remote planet on the edge of the galaxy. We'll call it Earth. And we're going to just send ourselves back to the Stone Age, shoot our starships into the sun so we forget the technology, and just land ourselves on this planet. Maybe breed with the locals as well. By the way, that's the plot of Battlestar Galactica.
Yeah,
spoilers, sorry. But that might be real.
Who's to say that hasn't already happened?
It sounds like the movie The Village, where they build their own reality and they're like, don't go outside of these borders because, it's Plato's cave to a certain degree. I mean,
it's Plato's cave.
But look at the pyramids. Who's to say that we didn't already have this and we gave ourselves amnesia and we've forgotten how to build the pyramids and all the crazy stuff that potentially those SAR scans have shown under the Khafre pyramid, of just how immensely deep, like what's going on there.
Does make you wonder.
And And it's really baffling that, the Sphinx potentially being over 12,800 years old, maybe even 25,000. It really does blow my mind of everything that you just said is we probably already did this. Maybe that is the myth of Atlantis. Maybe they figured all this stuff out.
And they got off planet.
And
To that point, to that end, if we have the technology, whoever we are, I assume our military industrial complex, whatever black budgets and special access programs that we don't know about, but the concept of a breakaway society, right? I mean, now we're at the precipice of where, again, Musk and one of his big things is let's get to Mars and let's go colonize Mars and even the moon, etc. I guess it would be a bold thing to speculate that they would start doing that, but couldn't that be a possibility? You know what I mean? Like, hey, we're figuring out the interstellar RV for ourselves first, and we're going to go out and kind of explore before we really bring this into the public sphere.
Well, that's a good point. Why are they messing around with all that stuff, Ashton?
What's the point of it if not to use it for something like that?
If we have all this super advanced, why are we still sending rockets and trying to go to Mars that way? Why aren't we just opening portals and
yeah, well, money is money, and here's the thing: you can't just break that technology out to the public, right? So a lot of people ask why have we not won all the wars on the world? Well, we kind of have. I mean, what I would really say is who's really threatened the United States in the last 70 years?
Right,
like basically nobody. And there's probably a reason for that. And if you listen to my last podcast with Salvatore Pais, who's U.S. Navy engineer with those patents, those UFO patents.
Oh yeah,
I mean, he basically said, if anyone were ever even think of attacking us, it would be over before it even began. Yeah. People have no idea what we really have behind the scenes. And Bob Greenyer did a follow-up where he was saying the other day that, if you tell people that we don't need rockets and we don't need all this, it doesn't sell. You don't make money that way, right? You make money selling all the conventional obsolete shit.
Right.
The real bigger question is does Elon know, and is he in on it, and is for some weird reason? Because that would be sick, man. It would be sick if Elon knew.
I think
he's talking about rockets and shit when he's known that we could teleport. That would be really messed up. Because what he's been saying to Joe Rogan and stuff is he doesn't think that there is any electrogravitic technology. He doesn't think that the Lockheed Martins have it.
All of that.
No, he straight up said he doesn't think that Northrop Grumman and Lockheed Martin have this. Right. I would know. And all the stuff he was saying is wrong. It's I have a security clearance. I would know. That's not how that works. You would not know just because you have a security clearance.
Right.
But yeah, and the thing too is he's talking about the Kardashev scale. And one thing I would say is that we got to get away from this idea of Dyson spheres. This technology basically means there's enough energy in just empty space they say in a small area of empty space to vaporize all their oceans. So the reason why we're not seeing Dyson spheres is because once civilizations realize 0-point energy is out there and space is not empty and there's this huge amount of hidden energy to tap into.
The ancients called it mana.
Then they have infinite energy everywhere around them. They don't need a Dyson sphere. And now the Kardashev scale becomes obsolete too. Because the Kardashev scale is this idea that you're going from star to star, getting more and more powerful, but when you just have infinite energy everywhere. So you're going to go straight up that scale to almost God level technology.
Right.
And that's another reason why you hide it is now it's you're realizing we went from cavemen to fire. And now we're going to go from fire
right
up here to, the next thing, which is a huge
major
jump.
Right.
And what I would say about science is that the one thing science missed is just what I said before about 0-point energy. They think that there's just 0-point energy is insignificant, right? And the answer is it's not. It's really significant. It's basically infinite energy. The thing about science is science is constantly getting stuff wrong. And the thing about science is that's the beauty of it. We're constantly relearning. But we've got stuck in this peer review. It becomes this elitism, gatekeeping thing now.
Yeah.
And that's what's been holding us back. One good example is we were sure the age of the universe is 14 billion years old or whatever. But then James Webb Space Telescope goes up there and sees these galaxies that are super far away that are way too advanced. And they're going, okay, now they think it's 26 billion years old. So we just added 13 billion years to the age of the universe.
That's the accepted or the current model.
It will be soon, but yes, you can find the article out there. that shows that there's like, just based on how far away the galaxies are and how advanced they are, it just cannot be that young anymore. So it really just shows like the more powerful our telescopes get, the older the universe seems to get as well along with it. So we're constantly learning. And just add a little more scientific weight to the 0-point energy thing. It turns out 0-point energy actually solves like basically everything we don't understand about physics right now, which is mass, inertia, and gravity. All of these things. Mass is just your weight. Inertia is, why can't I be like Superman and go with speed of light? Why is there this weird resistance to acceleration? And then gravity is the force we feel that pulls us down. All of these things are because of the 0-point energy field. The 0-point energy field is this energy field all around us that gives space-time its form. And we start playing around with that, you're going to get mass, inertia, and gravity. So why do we see all these things? Because of the Earth. Why do we have mass? Because of the 0-point energy around us. And when there's less 0-point energy, when there's less mass around us, you see it. So these are all just, again, the same science that everybody's been being taught, but you're looking at it through a slightly different lens of it's being caused by this energy field that we have all around us. And the last two things are dark energy and dark matter. Mm-hmm. We need dark energy because we need to understand how the universe expanded during the Big Bang faster than the speed of light, which shouldn't be possible, right? But dark energy is the answer to that. And turns out dark energy is just the 0-point energy, because the 0-point energy is a negative energy density. That is what we need for dark energy. But also, it can also be what we need for dark matter, which is the opposite, which is why we see, like, we need more stickiness in our galaxies than what we see when we look out there. So we say, oh, there must be more mass, which is causing more stickiness, and we can't see it. So we call it dark matter. But the answer is we don't need more the more stickiness is just space-time itself, because space-time is not actually empty. That's all they messed up. If space-time is not empty, then there's going to be generally just more stickiness there, because we're in a fluid, we're in a medium.
Right.
So all the answers all the big questions get immediately answered with 0-point energy, which is another one of those things, back to the brainwashing, where I just went like, how am I the guy doing this? I had so many days where I'm just sitting there going like, how am I the guy? Like, how did nobody else put these pieces together? You don't need the videos to put together this science and realize that it answers like the UFO stuff. And one last thing I'll point out is, out of all the people to start reading all of these scientific papers, of which I've read, I don't even know, probably well over 100 now, but the one guy that stuck out to me right away when I started reading all these papers about 0-point energy, wormholes, Hal Puthoff. Turns out he's like the main guy in this UFO phenomenon. And again, I didn't know about all this lore about this stuff too, but he's been the guy on or like involved in a lot of these UFO groups that have started. And he wrote at least, I think, 20 papers about 0-point energy going back to the 80s. And one paper by Robert Forward in 1996 called Hal Puthoff out as the guy that started it all with the idea that gravity could be caused by 0-point energy. And I'm just going, wow, like this guy might be like the kingpin of like all of this stuff behind the scenes. Imagine who has more power than the guy that like figured out all the science,
That's what Terrence Howard, not to bring him up, but Terrence Howard's talking about 0-point energy. I have no idea about his theories. I'm not smart enough to try to wrap my head around his mathematics, 1 times 1 equals 2 and all that stuff. But he does mention Hal Puthoff as a major inspiration, and reading Hal Puthoff, he did another recent podcast very recently where what you mentioned earlier about peer-reviewed papers, and no one will review Terrence Howard's information, including Brett Weinstein and people within those circles. No one, everybody's been crapping on him, but no one's really actually dug into what he's written. So I find it interesting that you have this whole system set up, like you mentioned, where if you have people from the outside that are trying to push this forward and get this information out, or at least ask questions, and you're immediately thwarted and shut down.
Well, there's gatekeeping built in. Yeah.
I mean, Terrence, like he's saying all the right stuff. Like he's talking about 0-point energy. He's explaining that the ether is real. Yeah. He's explaining like Maxwell's equations being reduced are where things started to go wrong. I mean, he's right about all that, but you got to realize in his position, or anybody that wants to be somebody who's going to come out with real information, is they're going to attack you and discredit you, and they're going to use disinformation on you. So anything that you say that exposes you, they're going to hone in on that.
Yeah.
So they hone in on 1 × 1 = 2,
Yep.
or whatever they can to discredit him.
Yep.
And it does kind of work, right? Especially if it's something that sounds silly to a layman. When you say 1 × 1 = 2, it sounds silly to a layman. Now, when you actually understand he's talking about like geometrical structure of space-time and what have you, it starts to make more sense again. But the way that he says it, you know, it's off-putting, and they use that to attack him. While a lot of the rest of the stuff he says, I actually agree with for the most part.
Yeah,
I'm not sure I'm all in.
The flower of life and some of that stuff is really fascinating.
Yeah. So yeah, it becomes really challenging for, you know, first of all, for people on the outside in terms of what do you believe and what do you dig into. And I would say the only answer is you got to dig into it yourself. Is that I would tell anybody that goes down the path that I went down, I think will come to the same conclusions. If you're an open-minded, skeptical type person, you'll come to the same conclusions that, yeah, there is this huge thread that leads from, you know, a missing airplane to, you know, UFO phenomenon being absolutely real. And then what's the technology behind it? Well, somebody's figured out this advanced stuff. And the thing that I think is actually kind of fun about the MH370 case is, despite all of this, it still doesn't really answer the question of like, where did this come from? Who figured this out?
Oh, at all.
Like, did we like find a UFO and figure this out? Did like Einstein have some breakthrough secret that he never told anybody? Did, you know, we dig up something at some burial site and then figure it out? Like
Giant of Kandahar.
I'm
yeah, going into different caves in different parts of Afghanistan and the Middle East, looking for stargates and looking for of course. And to that point too, like you said it earlier, of just listening to the rhetoric on whatever you watch, Fox, CNN, whatever, YouTube, this, you know, getting caught up in that, the Dunning-Kruger effect that we think we know what's going on because we're listening to the authorities telling us, so I'm well informed, while at the same time we have like a global Truman Show going on, and we're just seeing the stage lights fall out of the sky. You know, we're the people that are like, now wait a minute,
the boat hit the
everybody should see this. But no, you know, again, it's people convince themselves. And you know, for years, again, this is why we eventually started a show like this, because this is the kind of conversations we enjoy having, where most people, their eyes start to glaze over because they literally don't know what you're talking about. It's not interesting to them, which blows my mind even more, because I'm like, this is far more interesting than whatever TV show you're watching that's been scripted and edited for you. There's a lot happening right in front of your eyes all the time. And that's where it's kind of like, are we gatekeeping physics? Are we gatekeeping different disciplines of science? You know, are we just not talking about what we've learned? Because again, it just seems like we stopped at a certain, and even Weinstein talks about that. He's like, string theory. Yeah, it's great. But where's the next string theory? Why did we just stop there? Why aren't we evolving for, like,
that's from the 40s.
We keep going, right? And we feel like we've just stopped, kind of.
Yeah. And Tesla was right. That's what this all comes down to. And this is another fun thing I like to say, is that I used to think Tesla was a mythical figure. Was never taught about Tesla.
100%.
I would see him on TV and I just thought he was like some person they made up for a TV show. Right. No, he literally made up the alternating current, 3-phase alternating current that we still use today. 150, 25, 50 years ago or so, whenever that was. And Tesla believed that we could harness the radiant energy, which is now what we call 0-point energy. He believed one day we would harness energy directly from space-time itself. And it's crazy to realize how far ahead of the game he was. You're right about the boat hitting the wall. That's a great analogy from Truman Show. That's what I feel like happened in the MH370 videos. Once that zap goes off, that's the boat hitting the wall. A lot of people see that, and I still remember my dad's first reaction when I like made him look at it. And he had like a physical spasm, like almost like it was like a robot. It saw something it couldn't possibly see.
Broke the Matrix.
And I was like, whoa. It was like, and I started to realize, like, this is the boat hit the wall moment. This is the moment where like there's no denying that there's some sketchy shit going down here now. And you can't deny that our government's involved in it, and like, no doubt. And it could change the whole world. And there's even more stuff that connects out there. The one big thing that I want to promote is Salvatore Pais's patents. I was just doing another interview with him, the UFO patent Navy engineer, which he actually doesn't like his patents to be called UFO patents, because he believes in human technology and that the science goes back far enough to like Tesla and Einstein's general relativity that we've had plenty of time to figure it out.
Right.
So, but I don't know, maybe he believes in aliens. I tried to ask him, he wouldn't get it. But people should look at those patents because I think they're real. And I think that this is what happened. I came to this epiphany actually earlier today. The story that makes the most sense now for me with Sal, after what he told me yesterday, is that he had those patents and he was planning on getting a team put together with the Navy. And they were going to like do more work on that science and advance it. And then apparently, and it was all ready to go. He got the like informal, we're going to approve this. And then apparently some people from, I don't know if they were from, he said from NAVAIR, some scientist people came in. And I don't know if they like initially gave the approval, but basically somebody somehow screwed over that whole thing. And so it didn't end up happening. And now all of a sudden he's kind of talking out there. So now I think that what might have happened, imagine this. What if there's a group like within the government, right? This covert administrative elite, which is not as simple as like the president, not as simple as like the top generals. It's more of like who's in the know of the shadowy club behind the scenes. What if they like sabotage Sal's stuff because they've already got it? They don't want somebody else to figure it out.
Sure.
Right. They don't want somebody else in the Navy to figure it out. And so they stepped in after the Navy and Sal's friends and people they know were trying to get it approved. And they're like, no, this doesn't work. Don't look into this. Nix this. And now Sal's maybe upset about that, right? And that would give him motivation for why he's been publicly doing interviews where he said kind of a lot on some of my interviews. Like he's basically said, he said explicitly he believes the videos are real and he thinks that that's the Pais effect on there. And I'm like, you know that I'm saying the U.S. Navy did this, right? Like that's where you work.
Oh wow!
Yeah,
wow!
Cool with it.
Wow! Yeah, that
everybody
that
go check
stranger.
that out. Everybody needs to go check.
I know
that
I've
out.
heard of him and I've read
that.
different articles regarding his work and his patent work and how it's kind of like, yeah, whatever, buddy.
Yeah.
Good job. Like it's kind of like they're patting him on the head and it's like, what the heck? I've got some groundbreaking stuff here, but
it's
even,
legit.
Even to Tesla, right? To his papers and his designs and the shutting down of Wardenclyffe and
6 trunks disappeared.
Yeah, I mean, he was really far ahead of the game. I'm glad you brought that up too, because again, that's a point I don't think a lot of people really understand, especially if you're aware of Tesla now, because 30, 40 years ago, I don't know anyone that ever discussed him at all. We learned about Thomas Edison for sure.
Yep.
Right. And Alexander Graham Bell, but not the guy that's responsible for energy proliferation across the globe.
They were both thieves too.
Yeah.
Well, they stole a lot of people's work.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in Sal, I started looking, and that's actually how I found Hal Puthoff. I was just reading papers. I had no idea where to start. So I was just reading Sal's stuff and I was going through his references and his papers because I had a feeling like from everything about Sal, the way he presented himself before I even met him, I already had believed in his patents. I believed that the ideas were real in them. And so I started reading the papers and I started realizing like, yeah, all this science is real. And then there was a link to gravity as a 0-point fluctuation force by Hal Puthoff, 1989. And, started reading that and kind of how I dug into all this. And now I realized that absolutely Sal's patents are real. Part of the problem is there just isn't anybody out there with the expertise to review them with the credentials that is willing to put themselves out there.
Right.
Because you actually have to be like an electrical engineer and physicist to understand this, because electricity is the grand unifier between quantum mechanics and general relativity. And so that's why this whole thing becomes really difficult and why it sucks for people like Sal, who almost certainly knows this science and technology is real. And he was trying to use it and advance it for his own purpose, and it seems like it didn't work out. So I'm going to do an actual deep dive on that. But how much stuff he said in my interviews, especially like the second and the third one, which was after I started digging into the science. And in the second one, I suspected that he had actually made the Orbs. Now I realize that he didn't make the Orbs, and maybe he got screwed over by people that did make the Orbs or make something similar to it. Constantly learning more, but definitely pay attention to that guy. And the people also, when they were poo-pooing on, they're trying to say his patents were like misinformation to throw our adversaries off or something. Like that's all nonsense. All the stuff that all the science he pushes out there is all supported by peer-reviewed work and stuff like that.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, we talk to a lot of different types of people. We talk to Bigfoot people, cryptid people, paranormal folks. And one thing that there's really a common thread is the orbs show up, whether it's a Bigfoot sighting, a UFO sighting, a paranormal incident.
It's true.
Whether it's James Willis or Travis Roy, who, in his backyard was thought he was tracking a Sasquatch and then sees these blue orbs and red orbs and then the thing's just gone. There's no footprints. There's nothing. And, the Expedition Bigfoot, which is, I think, some of the most unbelievable footage that they've captured in the world of Bigfoot. And I think it's legit. They have orbs and weird things pop up and then they're on the track of this creature and then it just absolutely disappears or it's just not in front of them anymore. They're picking up these weird kind of cold spots on their FLIR and thermal. And, I've always been a Sasquatch kind of material, flesh and bone, but as I go along and this 0 point energy and the orbs and I get more and more information like this, it's like, boy, nothing is really out of the realm of possibility anymore for me.
Well, it's an absurdist principle. It's absurd to think we know everything yet because there's so many things we might not know. Like, that's why Terrence Howard has some credibility to me, because anybody that says it's all settled, you're horseshit. Again, and you look at the Sphinx and you take Robert Schoch out there, who's not an archaeologist, but he's a geologist and he knows weathering patterns and he can look at rainfall and go, this is way older than they say because last time it was raining. That's another thing that I think is interesting is the lack of
multidisciplinary,
not letting people in because, again, they don't have the right credentials or card, but we lose so much by going, hey, just all you geologists get together. Hey, all you astrophysicists get together. No, don't bring anybody else in that might have a different, because again, that different perspective, when you're in a siloed group of thought, it's hard to get a different thought. You're all going to think along the same lines to a certain degree because you have the same training and discipline.
Isn't that what Bob Lazar thought? The reason why they couldn't advance that propulsion system, and because none of the scientists could talk to each other. He's like, who knows how long they were working on this thing before me, and it's so compartmentalized that you couldn't share notes.
That was the thing. That wasn't just because they were all scientists. It was because they were literally scientists that were working in silos from each other. I'm saying when you're all just a certain discipline of, again, whether you're geologist and it's just geologist, now you have to let in some other disciplines. And I listened to a podcast where the guy from, again, Five Finger Death Punch was talking about that. Apparently he's got the same kind of idea where, like, you need to have all these different people talking to each other, because even if they're not talking, even if I was just sitting there listening to a high discussion, say between some very intelligent, I might have something trigger in my brain that they don't, right? A thought, a abstract interjection that they're just not ready for. And it's going to stop them and make them think differently. They're going to have to take a different neural pathway than, the sidewalk in their mind that they're used to.
Yeah, you guys brought up a lot of good points. I think that, first of all, conditional possibilities, that, anything is possible under the right conditions. That's something that Sal mentions a lot. And I think that anybody you start to realize that we can engineer reality, engineer space-time, you start to realize, well, I'm not going to say anything's impossible at this point.
Exactly.
There are a lot of orb videos out there as well. I do want to point that out. I do recognize that. And I've seen a lot that are like weirdly in the same kind of triangle formations as well, which makes me think that like maybe we've had this kind of technology. And I think they are, at least I don't think they all are this. I don't think that all the UFOs are one thing, but I think a lot of them are probably these plasma drones. They've figured out plasma is just gas that's been ionized. So they figured out using like basically vibrations, like the theories of Tesla, frequency and vibration, how to create these standing waves that can create a coherent plasma that's now just able to be moved around, which is also incidentally the answer to how to make fusion work. Gravity is the answer to fusion. Two last thoughts. One, compartmentalization. I think Bob Lazar is right. The compartmentalization probably hindered advancement. And that's why you move it to private company, and then the project managers at the top become the ultimate, like people with the power, because they can see everything that's happening at the high level, where the Bob Lazars don't know what's going on.
Yep.
And I know I've heard from contractors this is exactly how it works. So the individual people don't know necessarily what it builds up into. But that doesn't mean that we didn't figure it out. It just means Bob Lazar doesn't know, and that's by design. He doesn't know how advanced we've gotten. And this is where people need to not get away from this idea that like one person's either telling all truth or all things. Like I can be wrong about stuff, but right about other stuff. Same with Bob Lazar, same as other people. The last thought I want to throw out there is that, and this is just my opinion, but there's a lot of talk about interdimensionality and stuff like that now in the UFO phenomenon. I feel like it's on the rise. And I got to say that in a certain aspect, I agree that this idea of this 0 point energy, you can think of it as an extra dimension. Like we don't see it, but it's there and we can measure it and prove that it exists. And also this idea of teleportation is like, you could imagine that's like you're going through an extra dimension to, go through two distant points instantaneously. But even in that situation, I wouldn't think of it as like aliens being extra dimensional. My personal view, even though in all of this, is that we live in one static universe, and that I don't personally at the moment think there's many worlds, like one timeline that we're currently in. And I think that time travel will work out, that ends up being the case, that you don't go to a different bizarro universe or what have you like that. And the aliens aren't coming from a bizarro dimension or dimension 1074 or whatever like that. That's my current impression at the moment. I just want to throw that out there. And again, I could be wrong, but I feel like the whole stuff about dimensionality and the aliens coming from another dimension is just to confuse us, honestly. That's the impression I've gotten.
Yeah.
Because the last thought I have on that is that if all that stuff's real, then why couldn't aliens be visiting us? If we can make a wormhole and travel around now, what Greer's saying about, what was it, Ambassador Bijou from the Andromeda Galaxy? The one thing holding everybody back, like the Neil deGrasse Tysons, is that distance is too far.
Yeah.
So if that becomes obsolete, then a moot point. Now, why can't aliens visit us? Now the question is, why haven't they been? Right. So,
well, similar concept. We're talking to you in another state right now. Talking to somebody in Australia on the phone used to be a dream. All these distances that used to be insurmountable. I think it's just a matter of time, and probably the time has already been. And again, like you're saying, we've already solved it. But I think the one thing about humans in general is we're going to figure it out. Like Star Trek, sounded so futuristic, so sci-fi. We carry a lot of the technology and devices around in our pockets and in our everyday lives that they discuss on those shows at a certain point. We dangle that carrot for ourselves by imagining it, and then we create it. And it reminds me of, real quick, a thought that was brought up by somebody, and it points back to it as a simulation, right? Like, so we want to find the smallest bits and pieces. We get down to atoms, and then we get to molecules, and then we split those, and we get to quarks, and then we find out there's even more styles of quarks. And as we keep looking, it gets smaller and smaller. And somebody was like, well, right. The more you look for it, it's like the 3D generator is rendering it for you as you search for it, right? So even the James Webb looking very far off into the distance, even further. Now it's 26 billion years. Well, when the camera gets better, it's going to get pushed to 30 or 40 billion years. That the galaxy,
you're observing it.
Right. So it's just, and can we see that far? So I don't want to say it's right or wrong, but it's just an interesting thought of like, we go, when are we going to stop finding what we're looking for? At a certain point,
Never.
We won't find that next smaller particle or bit, but I don't know. It's so tough because how do we collect all that data and actually keep all that in front of us and really get to that point? Because I think that's one of the hard things, and that's where I have the conspiracy that the Neuralinks will really jump us to the next level. Because, okay, I want to educate my child and I want them to know all the history of the Earth, et cetera, and have all this knowledge, but you've got to go forward too. We need you to keep thinking forward. So how do you preload all that? How do you learn enough to, it's a tough thought to really wrap my head around.
Yeah, that's the stuff that keeps me up at night is simulation theory and post-humanism.
Sure.
Is that okay? Is one of it is that you start to understand that this technology is possibly real. You think about the implications. One thing I can't get away from is that it all seems to wrap back around, like you said, to everything's got to be a simulation to a degree,
right?
And that every simulation, every construct has a creator as well. So you can look at it from the perspective of religion, where
Right.
Well, there's God for you. You can also look at it from perspective of maybe we're stuck in an infinite loop of universes. So this would be different than the many worlds hypothesis. This is more of just like mini universe theory in general, but similar, right, concepts. And then the post-humanism side, which is, I think, coming up very quickly, maybe even in our lifetime.
Same.
Which is like people uploading themselves to the cloud, like consciousness, like San Junipero from Black Mirror. Like, we're going to upload ourselves before we die, and then our memory, our whatever will live on forever. Like, I think that's coming, and this technology like really will make that happen quickly. And if they were hiding all of this, which I think they are, then all of this is kind of converging rapidly, like the AI, the tech singularity.
Oh, yeah.
And post-humanism all at the same time.
Oh, yeah.
But we've been obsessed. The people in the occult, Crowley on up through, they've been obsessed with transhumanism. I mean, the first Hollywood film ever made was Metropolis. I mean, that is about transferring consciousness into a robot. And that was in the 1930s, dude. It's really bizarre. Like, people have been pushing that for a long time. This is not anything new.
Well, but again, back to the scary part is generally where we put our will, we find the way, right? Within reason.
Yeah.
But again, once we dream up something, it's really, once it's in our imagination, even, it's almost possible, right? Like Leonardo da Vinci, people probably thought they had to think he was half cooked. Fly, are you crazy? Yeah, he was. He didn't have the technology at the time to accomplish his dreams, basically his visions. But if you get that vision, it's basically just a matter of time until you get the technology.
Reality.
Yeah, 100%.
Make it happen. I mean, the person that's going to build the first public warp drive is on this planet right now already. Like, it's going to be somebody out there, maybe somebody watching, maybe you or me. Maybe no, somebody on our planet is going to build it already. Like, we're willing it into existence right now. And this is why I say, too, a lot of people criticize me and will say, well, if this is real, why aren't you building something? Why aren't you a trillionaire with Elon Musk? Well, people are already trying to do it. I would say look into the history of people who try to make free energy type devices, cold fusion. It doesn't go well, ever.
Not for them, usually.
Nope. It's more of the bigger issue isn't that. There's a lot of people working on that stuff and struggling in many cases and spending their whole lives trying to do it.
Yeah.
It's more of a situation of it being an information war, or more of like just making people aware, like making people aware that Tesla was a real person, making people aware that 0 point energy really does exist. And very, very smart and famous people said it's not an insignificant amount of energy. Richard Feynman of the Manhattan Project, Nobel Prize winner for quantum electrodynamics, he's the one that says that there's this huge amount of energy at the quantum level and 0 point energy. Yeah. And John Archibald Wheeler, he's the one who helped invent the fusion bomb. He named black hole. He's the one. It's like, and I think wormhole as well. It's like, these are the guys that are the ones saying all this stuff. They're the legends in physics. And we've just ignored them, thrown them to the wayside under this idea of particle physics, where everything, even at the smallest scale, has to be a little atom of it has to be a little piece of matter, when it's not really how it works at the small scales. It's all just waves.
Yeah,
it's a great point. And Feynman, I'm a big fan of him.
Oh yeah,
he just one of the most exuberant and just thrilling people to listen to and take in any facet, whether he's talking physics, any kind of science material, or just naming birds. As a kid, it was funny. He's said a story of his dad telling me, what that bird's called? It's called this. You know what it's called in German and this and that. And he goes, you know about that bird when you know all these names? He goes, no. He goes, jack shit. You know the name of it, but you don't know anything about it. So, he was just way his brain worked, and how he, crunched the numbers and really thought about things was just all to its own. And yeah, he was fascinating.
Yeah. So I think a lot of those guys figured out this aspect of the universe, this idea of the ether or the 0 point energy. I think they figured it out a long time ago. And I think a lot of them were sworn to secrecy. And I think it was kept secret under the Atomic Secrecy Act, because it's like related to nuclear power. And I think this is also why the DOE is the top dog when it comes to the UFO topic.
Right.
Is that it all goes back to fusion research.
That's the boogeyman.
All goes back. They're the boogeyman. This is why they're the boogeyman. This is why they're more powerful than the president, because it's all the big answers: free energy, fusion research. And once again, I should probably not really call it free energy, because it's not just coming from nowhere. It's coming from this 0 point energy field.
Right.
And there's a lot of questions that you can begin to ask about that, which we don't have time to dig into tonight. But like, are we damaging the universe by pulling this energy out of space time?
Fair question.
But the answer is there's so much energy, and the amount that we use is like inconsequential compared to the amount out there. But those are smart questions. I think the other smart ones to answer too, or to ask are, and you'll hear a lot of people talk about this, is that this technology, it's free energy, is directly related to gravity manipulation. So if I pull energy out of this region here, I'm getting free energy. This is negative energy, so therefore I'm getting free energy out of it. And it's also creating a gravitational well at the same time. And gravity, we know from Einstein, is related to space-time. So what this means is that you're changing your rate of time when you start messing around with the 0 point energy like around you. So if I mess around with the 0 point energy around me, I can change the flow of my time compared to the flow of time outside of the bubble.
Right.
And what that means is, like, you can basically, like in Interstellar, you can mess around with the dial of time, and now I can age slower or faster compared to the people on the outside. And that's time dilation, and that's time travel too, but it's not really the way we think of it in the movies.
Right.
It's not going to work like I go back to the 1950s. It actually works like opposite. Instead, your body goes back to its previous state, but it always stays 2025. Still 2025 now for everybody else, but you might like reverse your local age to like being 20 years old, which is actually cooler in my opinion. It's like, and I asked Sal, I was like, because he wanted to talk about this idea. I was like, do you think that you lose your memories if that were to happen? Like, would you forget? And you know what his answer was? You guys will love this. I got to clip this actually. He goes, I think your body's like a receiver, so you wouldn't lose your memories. So your body would de-age, but like your consciousness is stored like on the cloud, like in the 0 point energy or whatever. And so therefore, like, you might still exactly remember who you are. And I went, holy shit. Because that would mean, if that's real, and we're just, we're playing around here, that would mean we can definitely achieve infinite lifespans, like, easily. In fact, people probably already did if that was the case.
I mean, that's the story of the King's List. These kings that lived thousands and thousands of years in Sumeria and Egypt, and the story of Osiris and Horus. I think those stories are telling us about technology of the kings, their bodies were dying, but they would transport their consciousness into a new body and just live for thousands and thousands of years. That's my personal belief. That's my out there kind of ancient civilization.
That's another way to do it.
Yeah.
Shit, for sure. Well, look at it like this. Quantum computers. No one really knows what the hell we're using quantum computers for. They must do something. We're building them. We're advancing them like crazy.
Oh, they do stuff.
But the way they work, though, is they're exponential. So every additional qubit makes the overall system twice as powerful as it was before, which, that starts to add up. You've seen all those games out there where they're like, would you take 1 penny per second or $1 million over the course of a day or whatever it is, right? It's kind of like that, where the quantum computers are going to quickly exceed everything, and they already have in terms of exceeded the capability of conventional computers. But because it gets exponentially more powerful, it's going to quickly reach the point where it can map every atom in your body or every aspect of your mind. So this is where I talk about like uploading yourself to the cloud seems impossible right now, but the rate at which the quantum computers are advancing, once the quantum computer can have an operating system and download this person's brain, you would say normally that's going to take too much storage, too much processing power to do, but the quantum computers are going to make that inevitable. It's inevitable.
Oh, yeah.
So whether it be longevity and making your body live forever, or downloading yourself into something else, like things that seemed sci-fi in the past, in the light of the weight of this technology of free energy and transmutation, now seem just a matter of time. Yeah,
and is a part of the code of who you are encoded into your DNA. And so is that part where epigenetics, and then you get into that where maybe you can store who you are and your memories just in your DNA. So when that all clicks in and your consciousness reboots, and your DNA loads all of that back to you. That's trippy.
Yeah, it's you're gonna get me started talking about way too much stuff here. Yeah, it's just thinking of injecting yourself into a simulation. Like, hey, your physical body is going to go away, but we're going to take you and your DNA and it's going to get literally reconstructed, and I'm Justin sitting in this chair now again. Right? Like,
if that's all possible, then
right.
we must already be in one, right? We must already be in a simulation. That's
Bingo.
why I keep saying we just got all the way back around to it, right?
Yeah.
So every time I do this, I keep coming back to we must be in a simulation, right? Like that has to be the answer. But end of the day, what I tell people is, even if simulation, life is. This is why we live, to live. That's the point, is appreciate the time you have. The most precious thing is the time that you have. So, don't nobody hurt yourself if this is blowing your mind or whatever. It's still, it's still real to us. We're real right now. So,
right.
Yeah. Right.
Agreed.
What is real? Real is only what the observer is experiencing.
Yeah. It's getting to a point where, we used to watch sci-fi movies and think, oh yeah, whatever, robots and Terminators and this and that. Now it's like there's some robot company making a robotic horse, or like a 4-legged like robot you can ride around.
Yeah.
Like it's just getting so strange. But the amount of tech that, again, if you give it the ability to think for itself too, and now we're getting into an even crazier realm of not just, it's a programmed robotic arm that lifts a case of this and stacks it there, and lifts a case of this and stacks it there. We're going to get to a point where I truly believe we'll have robotics to where we don't know they're robots. Like, you could be talking to me and you're going to have like Bishop from Aliens, or any of those cyborgs that are, presented, Data from Star Trek. It'll get very interesting, but again, we're not one to put the genie back in the bottle, right? We just had this biotech company that just cloned dire wolves, right?
Yeah.
We're going full on Jurassic Park.
Yep.
Like,
mammoths are coming.
It's been years that everybody's like, when are we going to actually be able to do that? Now, again, if you can do that with a dire wolf, you possibly can do that with any extant species on the planet. So that gets really weird. We don't put the genie back in the bottle. We go forward.
The big point there is that you can't put the genie back in the bottle. So this is actually my biggest criticism of Stephen Greer, is that he says, well, we'll release this free energy technology, but we'll hold back like the gravity manipulation technology. But that just shows he doesn't realize that they're intertwined. One is the other. In fact, you can't get one with the other, you could argue. And you can't really, it's all based on the same fundamental concepts and principles. So with the free energy technology, you also get the reverse aging technology, and you also get the gravity manipulation technology, and you also now get the technology or the capability to turn any of this stuff into a weapon. And that's the big thing. So you can see why maybe Stephen Greer is on the outside looking in while still trying to disclose this stuff, because he doesn't see that side of it. And so I can imagine there's different factions that all kind of have their own, justifications for why what they're doing is the right thing in terms of hiding it. Or some people, I think, want some of it to come out, including, I think, the vast majority of the UFO advocates that you see on the main shows and stuff like that. I think a lot of them are controlled. Like, there's the Stephen Greer side, and then there's a lot of the other guys who are all connected to one another, and they're all working in concert with the government to only reveal the information that's not going to rock the boat too much, But we also do need to be having the conversations like we've been having tonight about, okay, what does it really mean though? And how are we going to avoid this? Because like I just said, the whole point is that it's all or nothing. Once you reveal this, there's no more going back on it.
Mm-hmm.
And so any one of these threads that we've been talking about, any one of these technologies that starts to unravel and people start wondering how that's real, they're going to find out all of it. And in fact, I'll say that there's kind of an expiration date on hiding the stuff, because AI is already getting to the point where it's impressing the hell out of me.
Yeah.
When I add it and feed it stuff. Pretty soon, AI is going to be telling people the secrets to free energy and anti-gravity, or we call it gravity manipulation. And people are going to be wondering why the AI is doing that. Going, well, the AI has to be wrong. Why Neil deGrasse Tyson told me that we can't do this, right? And the AI is going to be like, nope, I'm correct. Here it is. Here are the proofs, right? And it's like, how do you stop it at that point?
That's a great point.
That is a great
I never
point.
thought about that.
Then all your gatekeepers, unfortunately, Neil deGrasse Tyson, materialist science, and from the beginning of his career, he was constantly on the radio and TV. He began his career as a scientist as being a media personality.
Yeah.
He was pegged right from the get-go as the guy for the public to disseminate information from.
Absolutely.
Oh, he's the
And
he's.
I
the
have nothing
mouthpiece.
personal against him.
Me either.
You know, I liked his Cosmos stuff in the beginning, and then he, you know, I don't know. I just can't take people seriously when they just think so inside the box about like alien topic, UFO topic. Even before all this, when my viewpoint was way different.
Yep.
Just like I just don't like this idea that like, oh, space is really far, there's no answer, therefore aliens can't exist, right? Like it just seems so like closed-minded.
And we just know
like the idea. It's so.
Yeah.
It like assumes that humans are like we're so advanced that we can never not understand something about the universe.
That's another
Like,
Truman Show parallel. Everything's been discovered. He wants to be Magellan.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
don't do it.
Yeah.
You know, or the Christopher Columbus trope. If you just go offshore 100 yards and you go, nothing out here. We've looked. We've gone as far as we can. It's like, what a joke. Like, you know, you're being lied to at those stages. Like, it just doesn't feel right. Like, to not be curious. Like, this again though parallels with when I start getting excited about stuff like this, and other people, you can tell they're not getting it doesn't do anything for them. Time travel or even that time dilation you're talking about. I've literally had conversations about that with folks, and their response was, "I don't care." It doesn't.
People care too much about Kardashians and all the other shit that's out there, you know.
The bread and circus.
And that's why I'm proud of the community that I've built, because I go, man, shit. I look at how many people, like hundreds of people watching me, and I'm talking about the stuff that like most people will be like, this is too boring, I don't care at all. And I got hundreds of people watching, and I'm like,
Cool.
This is also part of the reason why it's so easy to hide it. It's like the default stage is hidden. People don't care about this stuff.
Agreed.
And the last thing they do is understand the science. Very few do.
Yeah.
That's why I love my community, because they're people, just normal people like you and me, people that are working class people that are like understanding the stuff. And a lot of people tell me they appreciate how that it's made sense. Because I think that's the only way we're going to advance, is like we actually just have to like take the initiative to get smarter for ourselves. And I think when we do that, then everything will just kind of become apparent in terms of all the suppression. But who knows which thing will come first, that or, you know, AI just like, you know, ruling over us and telling us what's real and what's not.
It's a very real possibility.
Beautiful. Couldn't have planned out a better way to end the episode.
That was great.
Ultra thought-provoking conversation here with Ashton Forbes, everybody. Ashton, we appreciate you so much. This has been awesome. Let us know, everybody, where we can find you, where we can reach out, and don't go anywhere. We'll come back and give you a proper goodbye. We'll outro the show, but let us know where we can find you.
Yeah, you guys can check me out at JustXAshton on all social medias, primarily on X and on YouTube, but on the other socials as well, and streaming on YouTube and Rumble and Pilled now as well. So 3 nights a week. Check those out. And thank you guys for everybody on the Strange Road podcast. Thank you, Mikey and Bub, as well. Awesome conversation.
Absolutely. It's been a pleasure. I'm going to have a lot to think about tonight. When
I'm not sleeping.
Yeah, I'm going to need to decompress. I'm already thinking of what I'm going to eat after this while I think about what we were just talking about.
All right, Ashton.
Stew.
Much love, brother. Take care. All right, guys. We appreciate all of you listening, watching. That was Ashton Forbes. All his links are going to be in the description, guys. Make sure you go check this out. This isn't just, you know, missing airplanes. I mean, it just so happens that it's the catalyst to figure out maybe 0-point energy, maybe portal technology.
I got to be honest. When all this first started kicking off, when he first came on the scene, I was watching from a distance and thinking probably what everybody else is thinking, like, come on, man, we're reaching for answers now. It's just a plane went down. But then it's the whole thing of like, no, we have the ability to do all of these ways of finding it. It just, I think everything is coming together right now. It's just like, you know, the super volcano in Yellowstone. Well, the super volcano of strange and weird and conspiratorial is about to erupt.
The end of 2025. We are in for it. And all of you out there are in for it.
Tune into this one.
Keep hanging out. Keep traveling down the strange road with us. Much love to Stoner and Master Control. Much love to Bub and Ashton and everybody out there watching and listening. Don't forget to like, subscribe, hit that notification bell. Make sure you follow us in Instagram, X, all over TikTok. We're going to put this baby to bed. Love, peace, and chicken grease. We are out.
Later.
Cue that tune. Awesome, dude. Woo.